1. What will happen if? 2. What would happen if? 3. But what if my dad sees you? 4. I wouldn't resign if I were you. 5. If I had the time, I would go. 6. What would have happened if? 7. If I have time, I will visit you. 8. If he loved Cathy, he'd marry her. 9. If I wake up early, I go jogging. 10. If I were you, I'd buy the Pontiac. 11. I'll break your neck if you tear it. 12. It isn't as if she was so very poor. 13. Switch it off when the film is over. 14. What if we go to the cinema tonight? 15. If I knew her name, I would tell you. 16. If people eat too much, they get fat. 17. If I were you, I would tell my father. 18. She could buy a car if she could drive. 19. It isn't as though she was so very poor. 20. Phosphorus burns if you expose it to air. 21. If she was sleepy, she would have told us. 22. If you wait for me, I'll give you a lift. 23. If he didn't love Cathy, he'd divorce her. 24. If he had called you, you could have gone. 25. If he loved Cathy, he wouldn't divorce her. 26. If he'd loved Cathy, he'd have married her. 27. If you heat water to 100 degrees, it boils. 28. You would have gotten wet if it had rained. 29. If I were you, I'd stick to my own decision. 30. If it had rained, you would have gotten wet. 31. If the baby is a boy, we will call him John. 32. And what if I slept in your place afterwards? 33. Call me names again and I'll punch your nose. 34. If he'd loved Cathy, he would have married her. 35. If I had more time, I would travel the world. 36. If it rains tomorrow, we'll go to the cinema. 37. If it's sunny tomorrow, we can go for a swim. 38. If he is late, we will have to go without him. 39. If I were a millionaire, I would buy a castle. 40. If the baby was a boy, we would call him John. 41. If anybody comes, tell them I'll soon be back. 42. If he didn't love Cathy, he wouldn't marry her. 43. If it rains tomorrow, we won't go to the beach. 44. If it rains tomorrow, we'll play rummy all day. 45. If somebody comes, tell them I'll soon be back. 46. They won't let you in unless you have a permit. 47. Would you've had the time if I'd had the money? 48. If Barbara was studying, the lights would be on. 49. If Barbara was studying, the lights would be on. 50. If he hadn't loved Cathy, he'd have divorced her. 51. If you call me names again, I'll punch your nose. 52. In case you need me, I'll be in room 202 all day. 53. He'll accept the job unless the salary is too low. 54. I wouldn't have to work hard if I were a rich man. 55. If you'll stop smoking, then I'll stop drinking. 56. Be nice to me and I'll buy you a box of chocolates. 57. If he'd loved Cathy, he wouldn't have divorced her. 58. If I find her address, I'll send her an invitation. 59. If I were a rich man, I wouldn't have to work hard. 60. If it doesn't rain tomorrow, we'll go to the beach. 61. In case they're late, we can always sit in the bar. 62. Leave me alone now or I'll never talk to you again. 63. Will Uncle Alf be pleased if we buy him a new pipe? 64. I will send her an invitation if I find her address. 65. If I won, I'd give you all the money that I got. 66. If equals whenever she is sleepy, she's always sulky. 67. If equals whenever she was sleepy, she was always sulky. 68. If I had worked harder, I might have passed the exam. 69. I'll do anything you want if you leave me alone now. 70. If I win, I'll give you all the money that I get. 71. He felt as if he'd been sleeping for 100 years. 72. If I have enough time, I'll watch the football match. 73. I'll be back tomorrow unless there is a plane strike. 74. SSH. What if someone had heard us talk about all this? 75. You could have been on time if you had caught the bus. 76. As if I cared whether Hilda's coming to the party. 77. Even if I do my best, I feel I'll never get to the end. 78. I would be grateful if you would give me a little help. 79. If he hadn't loved Cathy, he wouldn't have married her. 80. If I found her address, I would send her an invitation. 81. If you'd given me your email, I'd have written to you. 82. What will you do if you should happen to lose your job? 83. If I'd known you were in hospital, I'd have visited you. 84. If it rains tomorrow, we're going to play rummy all day. 85. If you are nice to me, I'll buy you a box of chocolates. 86. If you will come this way, the manager will see you now. 87. I'll buy you a beer if we needn't wait long in the bank. 88. Unless he gives them the jewels, they'll shoot him dead. 89. You look as if you get on with your parents pretty well. 90. Glenda might have died if she hadn't had a crash helmet on. 91. He felt as though he'd been sleeping for 100 years. 92. If he had been careful, he wouldn't have had an accident. 93. If I had a lot of money, I would travel around the world. 94. If I were in your position, I'd stick to my own decision. 95. If it doesn't rain tomorrow, we won't play rummy all day. 96. If my mother knows about this, we are in serious trouble. 97. You would have passed your exam if you had worked harder. 98. I would have believed you if you hadn't lied to me before. 99. If I had gone to bed early, I would have caught the train. 100. If the baby had been a boy, we would have called him John. 101. If we win this match, we are qualified for the semi-finals. 102. If x equals -4 and y equals -3, then x times y equals +1 2. 103. If you cross an international date line, the time changes. 104. If you had worked harder, you would have passed your exam. 105. If you hear any noise inside, call the police immediately. 106. If you can come round sometime, I'll show you my etchings. 107. If you were to ask him nicely, he would probably help you. 108. We'll worry about it if and when the police ever find out. 109. I would travel around the world if I had $1 million. 110. If the case is that it's 10 o'clock, she must be sleepy. 111. If I had had time, I would have gone to the football match. 112. If we must queue for the tickets, we'll miss the beginning. 113. If you hadn't lied to me before, I would have believed you. 114. If you see Mr. Fox tonight, tell him I am ill. Imperative. 115. I'll be waiting for you even if you don't love me anymore. 116. Is baby asleep yet? If so, we can turn the volume up a bit. 117. Wouldn't you work at all if your husband was a millionaire? 118. Don't switch on the TV in the morning if I'm still sleeping. 119. If Jake was here now, he would be drinking his 7th pint. 120. If you had warned me, then I would not be in prison now. 121. If you should see Pat, could you tell her I'm busy all week? 122. You look as though you get on with your parents pretty well. 123. If she'd been sleepy, we would still be in the same town now. 124. If you had given me your email, I would have written to you. 125. You see, we could be playing tennis now if it wasn't raining. 126. If I had known you were in hospital, I would have visited you. 127. If I won £1 million, I would stop teaching. Improbable. 128. I'm sorry, but I won't answer the door if I'm feeding the baby. 129. Shall I help you in with those bags? Yes, if you would. 130. You see, we could be playing tennis now if it weren't raining. 131. If I were younger, I would surely not mind such inconveniences. 132. It would be very kind of you if you put all this down on paper. 133. The last bus is gone. It looks as if we'll have to taxi a taxi. 134. They may change their minds if you don't reply until next week. 135. You'd better cancel the trip if you don't feel better tomorrow. 136. Hard would cook every day if he could use his landlady's kitchen. 137. I'd have bought you a present if I'd known it was your birthday. 138. If the case is that it's 10 o'clock, of course she is sleepy. 139. If I had found her address, I would have sent her an invitation. 140. Is anybody watching the TV? If not, I'll turn it off, all right. 141. Mrs. Boober wouldn't be so generous if she were in your position. 142. Whether or not it rains tomorrow, I'll go to the football match. 143. Whether it rains tomorrow or not, I'll go to the football match. 144. How will you provide for your family if you should lose your job? 145. I wouldn't have paid so much for those shoes, if I had been you. 146. They might change their minds if you don't reply until next week. 147. Would it be okay by you if I telephoned you early tomorrow morning? 148. How are you going to provide for your family if you lose your job? 149. If you will kindly wait here, I'll get you the receipt in a minute. 150. She'd be a millionaire now if she hadn't left fingerprints behind. 151. He wouldn't have had that terrible accident if he had been careful. 152. Doris often asked her mother if she would be rich when she grew up. 153. If the case was that it was 10 o'clock, she must have been sleepy. 154. If I don't see him this afternoon, I will phone him in the evening. 155. If you help me with the dishes, I will help you with your homework. 156. He would have noticed the boss if he hadn't been dancing on the table. 157. How will you provide for your family if you happen to lose your job? 158. If the case was that it was 10 o'clock, of course she was sleepy. 159. If he had been careful, he wouldn't have had that terrible accident. 160. If you would kindly wait here, I'll get you the receipt in a minute. 161. We wouldn't be late for the concert if you were eating a bit faster. 162. We wouldn't have bought a 12-year-old Trabant if we were richer. 163. We should be very pleased if you submitted your proposal in writing. 164. Wouldn't it have been better if we'd all gone to the cinema instead? 165. Anna would have been wearing gloves if she hadn't been in such a hurry. 166. If Bud could cook, he wouldn't have to eat in a restaurant every day. 167. If you can't come in the morning, I'll be waiting for you in the pub. 168. Won't the children be disappointed if you don't take them to the zoo? 169. He'll have been managing the firm for 20 years if he stays until July. 170. I would have bought you a present if I had known it was your birthday. 171. The boss sounds as if he's going to make a very long speech this time. 172. Had she been wearing gloves, she'd never have left fingerprints behind. 173. I could have been entertaining the guests if you'd been serving the food. 174. If I were to ring you sometime, would you have 5 minutes to explain? 175. If it hadn't been for Anna, we'd all have been arrested at Hegyeshalom. 176. If I've done everything by midday, I'll give you a ring in your office. 177. If you don't leave me, we'll have been together for 10 years next year. 178. They won't fire Smith if he's been working here for 30 years next year. 179. Unless you put, if you don't put, the money back, I'll call the police. 180. Were he more hardworking, he could probably make ends meet more easily. 181. What would have happened if Joe and Meg had fallen into the ocean? 182. Would the children understand me if I didn't have an Australian accent? 183. If he should miss his connection at Moscow, he'll have to stay overnight. 184. If I hadn't known you guys were coming, I might have been having my bath. 185. If she'd been wearing gloves, she wouldn't have left fingerprints behind. 186. If we cannot come to a decision now, we shall resume the debate tomorrow. 187. Should you require a company car, we will willingly provide you with one. 188. If you bought my school supplies for me, I might be able to go to the park. 189. The company's profits will be good as long as the dollar is not devalued again. $190. If it didn't rain tomorrow, we could go rowing. If it doesn't happen to rain. 191. The company's profits will be good supposing that the dollar is not devalued again. 192. The company's profits will be good on condition that the dollar is not devalued again. 193. If it weren't for this drought, we'd have much better crops. Were it not for this drought. 194. If the sum of the digits of a number is divisible by 3, the number is divisible by 3. 195. Sandra could type much faster if she didn't drink so heavily. Equals Sandra would be able to type. 196. If I became president, I would change the social security system. Said by a schoolboy, improbable. 197. If you had warned me, I would not have told your father about that party. But you didn't, and I have. 198. If Billy had better school results, he could go out at weekends. Equals. He would be allowed to go out. 199. If I had known you were coming, I would have baked a cake. But I didn't know and I didn't bake a cake. 200. I would have been happy if you had called me on my birthday. But you didn't call me and I am not happy. 201. If I had worked harder, I would have passed the exam. But I didn't work hard, and I didn't pass the exam. 202. Sandra could have typed much better if she hadn't drunk so much gin. Equals Sandra would have been able to type. 203. If Billy had had better school results, he could have gone out at weekends. Equals. He would have been allowed to go out. 204. Could she speak more languages? she would have much better job prospects. If she could speak more languages, she would have much better job prospects.